Hey there, Game Devs. Tony Chan here, and thank you for joining me today. This is the Game Dev Loadout podcast, where we learn how the best people in the game industry found success so that we can learn and model after them. And you can learn more about the show at GameDevLoadout.com. And for today's episode, I interviewed Darren Bacon, a concept artist who have worked at big studios like Bungie, Disney, and Electronic Arts. Currently, he is working at Microsoft 343 Industries on the Halo series. Here are 3 key points you will learn today. First, how to build your portfolio so that it's tailored to a specific company. So, of course, you don't just want a generic and general portfolio. You want a portfolio that's fit with a company that you're trying to go after. We also talk about Darren experiences with studio closures and relocation, which of course could put a toll on a family and the person. So we talk about what you can do to prepare for something like that mentally. And also, we talk about how mindful meditation can benefit you. And if you read articles on it, meditation has a lot of benefits to it, so we definitely cover that. Subscribe to the show for more awesome content and share it with your friends, because good friends share their content. Now, let's dive into the interview. Enjoy. All right, Darren, go ahead and give us a bit about your personal life and how you got started in the game industry.
Cool. So I got started in the game industry via like an internship while I was in school. So I was in school for an entertainment program. The group of people I was with were like the inaugural class. And I got an internship at a small studio in Seattle. And it was more like a contract position. So took like a 3-month contract break for the summer and got started at that studio called Zombie, which is no longer there at the time. But it gave me an opportunity to come up from LA, where I was in school, and get to meet a bunch of people in the game industry, work on a few projects, see how it works. And that's pretty much how I got my foot in the door.
So why did you switch all the way to Seattle and stuff, sticking to Los Angeles, which is also, a big video game place?
When I was in LA, I was there for school, and I worked at EA Los Angeles as well, but that was later. So once I when I was in school, I kind of was looking for an opportunity anywhere, and the Seattle position worked out. I got it through like a friend / mentor who was in school with me, and he had worked at the studio previously and got my information to the CEO or one of the co-owners. And that's sort of how that connection formed. And so it just happened that the job was in Seattle. And so I came up here for the summer, then I went back to LA. That opportunity at Zombie is what helped me get my a job at EA LA afterwards. Again, sort of with the same friend who had experience in the industry. And then that's kind of like how it happened. So I was in LA, then I went to the Bay Area, and then ultimately back to Seattle, where I am now.
Yeah, nice. The networking is so important. So on your latest talk at GDC 2018, you talked about constructing a portfolio to help us get noticed and help us land our dream job in the end. What is probably something we don't know about building a portfolio that we should?
I think it's really important to kind of do what you love, do what you want to do, and what you're known for. I think there's a lot of, I felt this way too. There's pressure, I think, from when you're in school to just sort of like build a portfolio that will get you a job. And I understand that because you have to work. But I don't know if I mentioned this there, but I've done all sorts of work, and I just tend to not, I try to keep the portfolio very sort of like honed in on what the type of work I want to do in the future. Right. And I think it gets back to, building a legacy, and kind of trying to do for yourself. Like if you can, like, if you're a young artist, and if you can sort of close your eyes and imagine where you want to be in 20 years, or like what you want to be known for, like when you're dead and gone, which is kind of an abstract thing to think about. But like, for example, like Ralph McQuarrie, right, who has this incredible body of work, from working in Star Wars and the film industry and all this stuff. He has this like tome of a portfolio. So I try to think of it as like, how do you at the end of your life or whatever, at the end of your career, like, what do you want to be known for? And then, which is crazy if you're like a college student, but trying to like figure that out as soon as possible will be really helpful. So like in my scenario, I was like, well, I really want to do sci-fi art, right? And so that's been kind of how I guide a lot of the choices I have to make.
So go into more details about that, like your legacy. What do you want it to be? How are you going to achieve it, and et cetera?
I feel like I'm not there yet. Like I feel like there's tons of work to do. It's kind of daunting because there's just not a lot of time. But yeah, I would love to be known for having some really inspiring science fiction body of work at the end of my career. I feel like I'm sort of chipping away at it, but like I said, I sort of feel like I'm just at the beginning.
Yeah, it takes time, right? Building a legacy takes years. So yeah, definitely all the best on that, Darren. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
What mistakes are most common, even at a pro level, when you see people building a portfolio, or if they already have a portfolio? Like, what mistakes do you see?
Yeah, I think it's building a portfolio at a pro level. I mean, I think it's most important to have a really good plan for what you're trying to go after. And I think sometimes we see portfolios that can be a little too broad, or not, you know what I mean? Like not focused in on what they're trying to achieve. And I think it just kind of like when you're building a resume or something too, you kind of want to hone that resume for the opportunity. Yeah. And I think that's mostly what I see.
So it's like unfocused. It's like not zoned into a particular skill. Like we should just focus on if I'm a game designer, that whole portfolio should be what I've done as a game designer, not including maybe programming or art or anything like that. It should be zoned into a particular skill.
Yeah, well, I think art directors, companies in general, they want to know that you're sort of like in it. You have to kind of prove it to them, right? So, for example, if I wanted to go work at Campo Santo or something, right? I could show the studio like my portfolio, and they might be like, wow, that's a great portfolio, but it doesn't really fit what we need. And so they have a hard time imagining, like, does Darren like actually want to work here, or is he just, trying to get this job just to like pay the bills? I think one of the ways, my boss, one of the guys I work with and mentor, Sparth, he sort of like has he's like this renowned concept artist. And so he has this saying, it's in French, but I don't know French, so I won't try to go there, but it's something along the lines of like just doing a job to like cut the chicken, right? Like as if you're on like a assembly line or a factory. And so I think sometimes it's obvious when you see people who are just trying to like show up to just do the job and just make a paycheck and then go home. And that's fine. But like, these game companies, projects, we're all want to be super invested in this thing because it's authentic and it shows in the art and in the output that like, wow, this person really cares about it. So back to my analogy with like Campo Santo, like if I went to go work there, they'd be like, yep, Darren can do the job, but does he really, how in it is he really,
I'm still like, so how would we show that? Like, would we show similar art to that company, or? Okay.
I think so. I think it naturally shows, right? The same is true. Like if you wanted to be a viz dev artist, like if you like a Disney or something, or if you wanted to go work at Naughty Dog, it would you kind of want that even if it's not true, you want to like sell that appearance as though like, yeah, this is just oozing out of me. This is all I want to do. This is what I was born for. This is going to work best if you are truly intrinsically motivated, like getting back to that idea of, are you working towards some long-term goal? Like, do you actually really care about this work? And are you here with us to sort of like build a legacy with us, or are you just sort of here to, keep the lights on?
Gotcha. Yeah, you got to show some more investment to it. And what are some like key things we need to include in a portfolio? So, of course, we want to include a work that's focused towards that type of company. Do we like need a website? Do we use some kind of good software to show our portfolio? Like, what are some key things that we might need to like really show our portfolio really well and done?
Yeah, I think website is important. Having a presence is important. I think a lot of people, myself included, don't feel comfortable doing that. And so it takes a while to get to that point where you have to kind of like, be a kind of online marketing yourself, but it is super important. And I couldn't, recommend it enough. I think it helps you grow as an artist, because when you put your work out there, it sort of forces you to look at it critically and then realize, wow, I could improve this. And then also have a, sort of like a timeline of improvement and can see an upward trajectory, hopefully. But yeah, anyway, all that to say, yes, online presence, important. I would recommend something like ArtStation. Previously, there was things like CG Hub, and websites like that. I think having your own website today isn't as important, but doesn't hurt to have a nice home base where you can sort of sort things out. And then just regular social media, like Instagram is super powerful now, just because the whole world is sort of like addicted to their cell phones. So if you're on Instagram, you have access to like millions, maybe billions of people. I have no idea. It's so many people.
Yeah, and of course, you want to start early building up your portfolio, Game Dev, so get on it. Now, let's learn more about you, and I want to learn about your worst moment of your career, that one moment that's still vivid in your mind. Be very detailed and tell us that personal story.
Worst moment in the career was, I think the toughest thing I've had to go through is like studio closures. And then with that, like a lot of relocation can be really difficult. So I think being prepared for those types of hardships can be important, and also understanding that that's just sort of part of the job. I haven't even had the worst of it. I've, friends that have had to move every 3 or 4 months, so it's like, it's just, navigating a, landscape that is moving pretty quick on the work side, right? On the contract side, especially like if you're working as a contractor, because concept art can be very short term, depending on the project.
Is there like a story you could tell us? Like, was there, I guess you don't have to name the company, but like what happened in that situation? What did you do? And what should we game devs avoid doing and do?
No, the company that I was referring to was actually a film company, Image Movers, and it was shut down by Disney. But I think the takeaway for me is like that company was sort of, it was being sold as like, hey, we have a 10-year plan. We're going to be making, several films in a row in our pipeline, move your families to the Bay Area, buy houses, get comfortable. We're going to be here, And so I think it's just, if you are a bit naive or this like early in your career, you might take that with a lot of stock. And I think what's important to realize is that no matter how big the company is or whatever, like things shift, projects pivot, and it can just change tomorrow. So I think just being prepared that that's the reality of like business is just, important.
That's a huge commitment, right? To ask an employee to move at a certain location and stay there for a while for a certain project. That's a huge commitment right there.
Yeah. And I mean, that was a really cool opportunity. It sounded good. Like I wasn't I was impacted by it, but like, I had friends that I was working with that had just closed on houses, like the day that they were getting this news. So it's just like it can be really impactful. So I think just kind of being able to go with the flow as best you can, understand that this is the nature of the industry, is important.
And when we prepare for a situation like that, what kind of backup plan should we have? Like just another job in the back of our mind, or of course we should have a lot of money in our savings account. But like, how else can we prepare for this type of situation?
Well, I think it gets back to like what you were just talking about having, you wouldn't want to like give up on your like online presence. Like, oh, I got a job, time to take down the website and sort of like stop trying. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think obviously it's great to like have backup plans and stuff, but I think it's just more like being focused on yourself as a brand or as the product, and then you're working at this company and hopefully it works out, and if not, you have to be prepared to move on to the next thing.
Yeah, well, one great advice that I got was to always update your resume, constantly update it, regardless, even if you're in a good position or not, just constantly update your resume, because you just never know.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's all I mean.
What are bad recommendations do you hear in your profession?
So in concept art, I think some bad stuff I've heard out there. I think that there is a viewpoint, kind of like what I was mentioning about the cutting chicken thing, that concept art is sort of dead, and that we're essentially glorified tradespeople who have a skill set and are just doing it to make a living, like a lawnmower. Like you just go to work, the skill set, and you just mow your path and go home. I think if you work with that approach for too long, you're going to get really burned out, for one. And it's obviously it's a bit transparent after a while too. I think the people that are successful at this long term are intrinsically motivated to do this, and they do it for like the love of the game, right? And which gets back to building legacy, and that it just can't be about. I mean, obviously we all have to like make a living and like put our, feed our kids and stuff, but yeah, it just has to be a bit deeper than that. And so I think it's kind of a trap to. I've seen with some folks where it's all about like, okay, getting my weekly rate up, and that's great and it works for a while, but it's just like in the long term, it's really tough to stick with this for 10 years, 20 years without, or longer, right, without having some other form of motivation.
Exactly right. I feel like you have to love the process. That's the thing. You have to love it, not just the money involved, but the process of doing it, because that's the whole point, right? You have to enjoy what you're doing.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, that is one of the things I really like about the game industry too, is that even as a concept artist, you have a lot of creative impact in the project versus like film or TV, which I've done a bit of work in both. And there you are really just essentially a wrist in a pipeline, and you feel it. It's cool and it's great, and for a while, and it could be fine your whole career. And like I said, like the money can be good, but I think it's like the neat thing about games is that you sort of come to work every day. You're working with a team. It's really collaborative, and there's just a lot of fulfillment and pride you can take when the project ships, because you're like, wow, I had a lot to do with that in like many forms and facets of the game. Yeah,
your work matters. Like it shows and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, totally.
What do you consider your biggest waste of time, and what would you have replaced that time with?
The biggest waste of time, I think it can be, I've noticed with myself anyways, without careful planning, even with simple things like, even just like approaching, sketching, right. Or keeping an online presence up to date with like, posts and stuff, like having some art to share. I think working without a plan in general, or like I was saying before, like an end goal, like, hey, I really want to get to this studio, or I want to publish a book by this date. It's really important, I think, because if you're moving along without sort of like time boxing things for yourself, things can just, creep forever.
Yeah.
When I was in school, one of the things that was interesting they had us do is actually had us like map out, our whole career, and like, which is pretty tricky to do when you're like 19 or 20. But what I found was interesting, I'm sort of like moving through it, right? Maybe like a third or halfway. And what's fascinating is that things actually work out for me, it has worked out pretty close to what I was expecting.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, what I was expecting, what I was aspiring for, right? So, yeah, I think it's just like I've found for me that like goal setting and planning can be super helpful. And when I get away from that, it's when I sort of get lost and sort of lose my traction.
Yeah, you have to know what you're setting yourself up for in the future. And I use Google Calendar. Do you use anything in particular to stick to the plan?
No, I mean, like I have a whiteboard with scribbles on it and like some binder somewhere with some other like super loose abstract ideas, but nothing as thoughtful as Google Calendars laying out my day.
You got a lot of experience now. What do you think was one of the best investments you've ever made? Could be investment of money, time, energy. What was a good investment?
I think the best investment I made was school. I'd say was expensive, but worth it. Would not have been possible doing this without it. And in that, I think the fundamentals I learned there, as well as the people I met, were really important and helped shaping my career and like me as a person. I think another thing that was really, in like retrospect, important for me was just taking risks early on. And I just mean being willing to, like, for example, when I moved to the Bay Area, I knew I wanted to work for a specific company, a specific production designer. And I just sort of moved there working freelance and hoping that I would get an opportunity because I knew that the studio was ramping up. And, it's not really a good idea. I would not recommend someone doing that. But at the time, it seemed like a good idea. The same was true. I went to a school in LA called Art Center, and I moved to LA prior to being accepted there. So that was probably also, I wouldn't tell my kids to do that. But, I was like 18 or something. So just getting a U-Haul van and moving to Pasadena seemed like an okay option.
Oh, yeah. That's also some big risk. But yeah, you learn a lot from it, right? So.
Yeah. I mean, totally. And I think you can do it when you're a teenager or in your 20s, right? It gets a lot harder when you are a bit older and have more responsibility, and you can't quite do that kind of stuff.
Yeah. In the last 5 years, what new belief, behavior, or habit has most improved your life?
So I think one thing that's been really interesting that I've noticed a big difference with is, I work at 343 Industries, which is a Microsoft. It's a division of Microsoft that makes Halo. And so Microsoft CEO, I think it's coming from the CEO, Satya Nadella. He's sort of like keen on mindfulness meditation. It seems like, and our CVP who runs our division, Bonnie Ross, she's also sort of like had this impact where mindfulness meditation has been sort of like had a big influence on these people. So Bonnie has instituted mindfulness meditation at 343. So a couple times a week, there's a guided meditation instructor or something, I guess that's what you call it. And I think that's been really interesting. I think mindfulness has been neat for me because it helps, it helps to focus your mind, and so you can be present and kind of see things for what they are. And also, it just makes you realize that, like, hey, we're all just sort of like here in this moment, and that's really all that matters. And there's been tons of research on mindfulness about how it actually like strengthens parts of the brain, and it's really interesting. I think it's almost like what jogging might have been like, in the 50s or 60s when scientists were like, hey, if you exercise, you're actually healthier. And I think now like research is starting to show that like, hey, if you do mindfulness training and focusing on the present, and your brain actually is healthier as a result. I think that's actually been really interesting. It's been neat in my personal life and at work. So yeah, I think that's been a really neat new behavior or sort of habit that's sort of come up. It started, like I said, as a work thing, and it sort of creeped into the rest of my life.
This is awesome because I actually started meditating again last week, and
nice.
Yeah, and it's definitely hard from the get-go. It's really hard because you want to stand still, you want to keep your mind focused, and it's taking me a while to get used to.
It's super hard.
Yeah,
yes.
It's super hard. But yeah, I read so many benefits. We're in our career where we have a lot of stuff going on, so it's important to like take that time to, I guess, relax or refocus or just have time for yourself or something like that. So yeah, definitely recommend meditating.
Yeah, I don't really quite have the vocabulary to like express all the positives, but it's pretty remarkable. Also, I mean, I was super skeptical going in, and I was just like, okay, I guess, you know what I mean? We'll try this now. And also I noticed with me, it took a while, maybe a couple months or something, to actually sort of start to get any traction, where I was actually able to not have just like, I mean, obviously the brain is designed to, have all these erratic thoughts, right? So like, I just feel like it was interesting for me to sort of have a really difficult time. And then sort of, I wouldn't say it clicked, but, it started to make more sense. And now I get it. And like I was saying, like, it's hard for me to like put my finger on it, but I definitely noticed an improvement in like tons of areas, from, not just being focused, not being anxious, not sort of like worrying about things long term. It's almost like a superpower, even like just dealing with like personal relationships at like home or with friends, and just being like, you know what, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It does feel like a neat little superpower in a way, like I was saying.
Yeah, it's like when you take that deep breath in, then you breathe out. It's like you're kind of letting everything out or something like that. It's hard to explain, but it's definitely, I'm definitely feeling like a slight effect from it. And if you could share, like, how does the company, so you say they bring a meditator in, or I don't know what they call a meditator, but
I know, yeah.
For smaller indie companies, if we want to practice meditation, like, how would you recommend them do it? Because I think that's a great thing to do, meditation. After hearing so many benefits and trying it myself, like, I'm curious how could we implement that into other companies?
So Bonnie, the corporate vice president at 343, she, I believe, was hiring a meditator. I don't know if the name is either. Her name's Manisha Dudley. She has a website and stuff on SoundCloud. It's just guided meditation. And so she was having Manisha come in and work with her like once a week or something, which, it was like 30 minutes at lunch, which doesn't do a ton, but it was like enough to sort of like, at least do something once a week. And so then she just opened it up to the whole studio, and she sent a mail around to the whole company. And the guided meditation person is just sort of like in the front of a large meeting room, and there's maybe 20 people, 30 people show up, and just it's a little weird at first, but because everyone's just sitting in a meeting room with their eyes closed meditating, but it works.
How long you do it for?
30 minutes. There's two a week for 30 minutes.
Oh, man.
30 minutes.
That's awesome.
It usually starts with like some instruction where like she'll explain, because this woman Manisha, she does this full time, so she's doing is going to conferences and reading books, and she's super into it. And so she sort of like will give a little exposition about what kind of meditation this is and why it's helpful and where it came from, and then kind of dives into it from there.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing that. If you had one opportunity to relay one message to game developers across the globe, what would you say and why?
I think just that the journey is the reward, and the process and people are what's important. Yeah, I think it can be really easy to get like, sidetrack with a lot of stuff, but just kind of, I guess, getting back to like mindfulness, right? And just being present and being like, hey, like today is Monday and we're doing this, and it's, we're doing it with these people, and we're going to do the best we can. And, that's kind of how I like to approach it. But yeah, I think if I had to address the game developers of the globe.
Yeah, you gotta enjoy the process. So awesome. Yeah, we have reached the beta phase now. So I will ask you a rapid fire question so we can get this episode shipped. You ready, Darren?
Yes.
Why do you love being part of the video game industry?
I love being a part of the game industry because, like I mentioned, the amount of influence you can have in a project as an artist, I think that is huge. Also, video games are cool.
Yeah, they're awesome. What was holding you back in the beginning from joining the game industry?
I think for me, it was what's the toughest thing for most people, right? It's just getting your foot in the door. I did start pretty early in my career in the game industry, so I was really fortunate in that respect. But I think perseverance is really important, and just sticking with it. I think, and on that note, I have a quick story I can share, and that's just that both at 343 Industries, which makes Halo, and Bungie, where I worked previously, that made Halo, then we made Destiny. Working at both those companies, I had applied and tried for years and years to get my foot in the door there, to get a job at either of those companies. And I ended up getting a job at both, and it just took a lot of persistence and sticking with it, and self-reflection, and trying to improve my portfolio and look for more opportunities. So yeah, I think if something's holding you back, it can just be a matter of sticking with it, and just it could just be timing.
Yeah, I love that advice, staying persistent. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
The best advice I've ever received is to find a mentor, seek out mentors. That was something that, like, I was told early on, and it's throughout my career. I've either actively seeked, or I can like look back and realize that, this person had a huge impact. So yeah, if I could give any advice, that would be my advice. And that is to, whether it's where you work today, or whether you're like seeking someone out somewhere, like find a mentor, and it can make a huge difference.
Do you have to, I guess, give anything of value in return for the mentor? So, some people, they sometimes might pay for a mentor, mm-hmm. but I guess maybe it's just usually better to, that's the thing. Like, how we find a mentor? Do we give something back in value? Like, what do we do?
Yeah, I think it's, I guess in my case, I haven't been in that scenario. I've just been, I've either seeked out mentors, like I usually only go work. I would try to find jobs with people who I really respect, right? Art directors or managers who I really respected. And then it's just sort of natural, right? Because me, as a result of like being a fanboy of a particular artist or a particular person, has lent itself to a mentor-mentee relationship. And then I've also had scenarios where, I found them in school, and these people have been influential in guiding me. And I haven't paid them. I've said thank you, so maybe I should do more. But yeah, I think at a certain point, right? Like, as people progress in their careers, and then they're not like more inclined, but I think it's just sort of like, as a result of them being in their position and they need help on the project, that they're going to give you information and help you to get better at whatever it is, you're striving to do, because it helps them ultimately. So it's a bit of a symbiotic relationship in that respect. But yeah, I think finding a mentor can be tough. And I know it's tough advice. I just think it's important to sort of keep your eye out for people that you can sort of like glean from and learn from, because I mean, especially in the game industry, right? Like so much of this knowledge is sort of like held in people's heads, so getting to know people and working with them can make a huge difference in your career.
What's a specific marketing tactic to stand out?
I think, I always say it's like just building a brand. You are the brand, right? I think that's the best marketing advice I have. I'm not great at online marketing. I wish I was better. I think as an artist too, like if you're a concept artist or an environment artist or something, or just any game artist, you can almost build a social media profile and use, like, so for example, sometimes I'll look at Instagram or I'll look at whatever's popular and I'm like, okay, you can almost design artwork for likes, which is kind of sad and sick, but it's possible. I know people who do it, who think about it, but yeah, I think so. You could maybe build a brand around, like I was saying earlier, like a specific company. Like if you were really interested in a specific game company, you could kind of like build a social media profile around getting their attention. Would be a neat way to do it.
Oh yeah, I like that idea. And you can keep tagging that company or something when you create a relevant art.
Yeah, I think I remember. I mean, the thing that pops to my mind like that, there was I forget what it was. I think it was a graphic designer who had done he did something for Windows or some really cool like student project that was like just amazing for like some Microsoft product, and Microsoft ended up hiring that individual just as a result of all the work on social media and how it had gone viral. So you can totally get people's attention with viral marketing, sort of social media stuff. It just has to be good.
Yeah. What resources should we use today?
I think nowadays it really does all come down to the social media. I think if you're an artist, like I mentioned earlier, ArtStation's really huge. Facebook used to be, maybe it still is. I think there's also different audiences on different platforms. So trying to figure that out and navigate that when you're trying to like get your work out there and sort of like maybe build a name for yourself, trying to find the right venue. Like maybe like if you were doing, like Tumblr has like a bunch of really cool, maybe trendy art, right? So like taking a look there and seeing how you fit and what sort of posts get a lot of traction, and then trying to figure out, working backwards from that problem and trying to figure out like how you could do that is sort of like what I would recommend with like using internet resources, kind of finding somebody who's doing it correctly and then working back from the problem. Yeah,
so Game Devs, that's your action item for today after listening to this episode, is to create those social media accounts.
Yeah.
So now this next question is a big one, so take your time. Imagine you woke up in the next morning in a brand new world and you knew no one. You still have all the experience and knowledge you currently have today. Your food and shelter is taken care of and you have a laptop. What would you do step by step on the path to join and become successful in the game industry?
I think if that were the case, I would probably work on a body of work that would get people's attention. I tend to think like I had a mentor once who I was mentioning that I wanted to like make a book, and he had said, that's a dumb idea. You should just put it on a website because there's way more people on the internet than they're going to buy your book. But I think what's important is when you're, especially, getting started or whatever, or if I sort of like had in your scenario, I could just work on a project. I would work on my own project, essentially, is what I mean to say. And I would publish it, and whether it's a game or a body of work, like images, like an artist. Yeah, that would be what I did.
Yes, do something you love. I got what you mean there. Awesome. We have reached a goal. Thanks again, Darren, for helping us out. Tell us how we can connect with you and anything else you want to mention, and then we'll say goodbye.
Okay. Yeah, you can connect with me. My website is darrenbacon.com. My social media handle, I think, is mostly Bacon's Bites. And yeah, you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Tumblr. What else is there? I think that's it. But yeah, I try to stay active on the main ones.
Make sure you connect with him at Game Devs. So, Darren, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for sharing your journey with us, and all the best to your work. We will catch you next time.
All right. Thank you very much.
Great. That's it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed the interview with Darren. You can check him out at darrenbacon.com. He gave a lot of great tips, like making sure your portfolio is tailored made, and try out meditation. See how it works for you. And please give it time, because meditation is hard. So start off with 3 to 5 minutes. Okay. And yeah, let me know how it works out for you. I'm really curious how it does for you. If you love this episode and you want to get more details, head over to GameDevLoadout.com/95. That is GameDevLoadout.com/95. Make sure you subscribe to the show if you haven't already, and share the content with your friends. Have a great day, and I'll catch you next Wednesday. Peace.